there was an absence of a top heel. At this time, we got Austin and we got The Rock, and they're the top faces, but always consistently Triple H was the top heel in the company and could work with any face at any time.
Yeah, totally. Well, of course, so this would be another time as well where sort of pointing out that Austin would have taken his ball, wouldn't he, Matt? It was
yeah. Yeah, it's true, yeah. And what a bad time that was. I mean, it's kind of like the unwritten law, isn't it? The biggest no-no in wrestling, maybe.
Yeah. But that just goes to show you, if that sort of thing happened today, where would we be left? Here, they were fine. I mean, okay, Austin was a massive draw, I'm not going to doubt that, but they weren't, they definitely had star power everywhere to replace, didn't they? I mean, it wasn't like a huge nightmare like it would be today if one of those guys got injured,
I mean, it definitely goes to say something where you got Rock in the backstage segment, but doesn't actually get involved in the match because they got too much talent on the card already.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it just goes to show you the roster. I mean, he was an active, on-the-road guy at that time as well. Now the Undertaker just doesn't hold back when he does that stuff, those leg drops and things. Talk about Hogan taking damage, but the Undertaker for so many years is, nobody talks about his body being beaten up, but I'm not surprised. See him doing this type of stuff. This is a lot more than what Hogan does, that's for sure.
Yeah. I guess as well, Undertaker went at it pretty hard for most of his career as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Triple H, he's had a long career, but I think he learned early on that you can do things at certain points in matches, and you don't have to give too much too soon.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to do it. I mean, I know we watch things like Ring of Honor and go, wow, it's blown our mind. But if you was to do that as a wrestler every night, it's really going to shorten your career.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say Triple H wrestles a boring pace at all. I think it makes sense the way he does it, and it does still actually tell the story it's supposed to tell in the ring, and it does actually still get the fans on their feet at the right time, but you don't really want to zap the crowd.
Yeah, I think that's what people forget. It's all right doing all those high spots, but man, you got to use a bit more psychology to get the fans invested in you for a length of time. You can only do so many as well, like risky moves all the time. That in the end it becomes normal, and that's the problem when it becomes normal. And that's why some of those moves that I just wish. I mean, I love Ring of Honor. I think it's a great company, and of course we went to see them earlier in the year, but if there was one thing I kind of wish it was like a little bit slower, that they didn't do everything. Like it feels like they have to sort of, like it's their last match all the time, that you're ever going to see them in. That's how they perform. But every time, absolutely every time is the same. But
I mean, it goes from one extreme to the other, because if we use like Kevin Owens as an example, when he made his kind of WWE debut, or what they call his debut, when he finally left NXT and came up to the main roster, the moveset he had then was so entertaining, so shocking. For a man of that size, doing those moves, hitting to the top rope, doing like springboard moonsaults and all of that, and it was incredible to see. But now we barely ever see that, and we're lucky to see a frog splash from Kevin Owens, and sometimes I do wish they would at least let him break out the big moves at a pay-per-view like a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam. That's when I would find that acceptable. So sometimes you like you said before, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't,
Yeah. Yeah, I think the things like it's like what I say about RVD. It's why it becomes so stale. Is because he'd literally go through all of his arse in every single match, and it didn't become. It wasn't like unique anymore, because everyone was just like, yeah, do that one, do that next one. Try and break your neck doing the next move. It was like they were just waiting for it. and it just become normal. Whereas everything Van Damme was doing at one time at least was very, very unique. Like no one else was doing or performing the moves like he was doing them. And I felt like it hindered him. Same could be said as well for someone like Rey Mysterio. You know, people took him for granted as well in the end. And I think people just become expectancy that, you know, he always has to do all the moves, and unless he does it, it's like a failure almost, you know.
Yeah, that was kind of a shame because, you know, Rey Mysterio, he had one hell of a career in WWE, but towards the end of it, you know, he really wasn't getting treated as well as he should have, and, you know, I think the fans had kind of lost their kind of connection to him for the little guy. I mean, so many times that we see him in Big Man versus Little Man, it was like the go-to with him, and he was the go-to Little Man.
Yeah.
But, you know, I do kind of wish they had rationed him a little bit more and actually like curbed his moveset, and because, you know, like you said, expectancy is a killer on your career, really.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. Well, this match so far has been very, very back and forth between these two guys, like an all-out war, as expected, really, I guess, between these two going on here.
Yeah, I mean, like, the timeline on this, like we said, was going to be a long kind of match, but it doesn't really felt that long to us yet.
No.
I mean, well, not to me anyway. I feel like they work at a great pace, really.
God. The way old Hebner took that was almost ridiculous, and then twice.
Very comical.
About overselling that one. It was like his big moment, he couldn't wait to get it. I'm guessing everybody's anticipating an NWO kind of thing going on.
I guess I spoke too soon when I said we weren't going to see The Rock in action.
Yeah. Well, here he is then. Looks like he's after Heyman. So I think all the way through it, Heyman said something about him on the commentating or something like that.
This would be a treat, wouldn't it? The Rock on commentary, you know. He's definitely one of the best, probably, at, you know, I would say on commentary, because he can talk well on the mic. So on commentary, he was always funny.
I love those women behind. They're absolutely having the best time of their life. Now the Rock standing there, they've just had Heyman to look at.
So which way would you see this match going then?
I think at the time I was probably rooting for Triple H.
Yeah.
I was really into Triple H at the time, but to me the Undertaker thing was like it had just started to pick up for him, so I felt like they were going to keep the belt on him because he'd only just sort of like he was a baby face for such a while, and then this was like part of his heel run, and the fact that he got his hair cut, I remember, you've cut your hair off, like the first time you'd seen him do that, and he went full blown heel in this run, so I felt like it was a bit more time for him, but there was, you know, like I say, what a roster at this point that they had, like, to be champion in this era, definitely you had to be a top guy for sure. They weren't putting this belt on just a nobody, like a transitional kind of champion that we get a lot of these days.
Yeah, I mean, like, these days it's so easy to say you're at the top of the company because you're holding one of the two world heavyweight titles, you know. But this time, looking at people like Undertaker, Triple H, Rock, and Kurt Angle and Rock, if you're standing head and shoulders above them with the title, then you know you've really made it.
Mm-hmm. I love the way the Spanish commentator just literally like tipped himself over as well as the Rock got kicked. It's always the Spanish announcers, whether it's the table or it's them. Hugo Savanovic. They've got The Rock coming back into this. That didn't work out too well.
No, it really didn't.
Well, that helped Undertaker out a lot. El Hebner's still down, like he's dead in the ring, pretty much.
Suspiciously, Triple H is bleeding from directly in the centre of his forehead.
Yeah, something that's definitely missing today, blood.
See, I'm not too sure this match needed it. You know, I guess like we miss it these days because there's certain instances when it would add something to a feud. But I'm not too sure this match necessarily needed that with all the kind of stuff that was going on outside the ring anyway.
Yeah, I think just back here it's just such a normal thing to do. Like a main event would always have blood for some reason.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't even thought of as a not a go-to thing. Like you got to have it. But I know Triple H at this point was probably keen on it because of the whole. I remember him saying in an interview like he was such a Flair fan when Flair used to do the whole blood spot in it. So you've seen another ref coming out. Is that Nick Patrick?
It's kind of strange when you think about it. There was no real pressure on WWE at this point to actually produce blood. I would say these days there's more pressure when you look at the UFC and you're thinking every time you see a match there's a potential someone could start bleeding at any point. So you'd think to add to the realism of WWE they would be trying to do it more now than they would back then.
Sure. Rock bottom there from The Rock.
Not one of those things you see very often when The Rock has helped Triple H.
So everyone is literally down. I can't believe El Hebner is still selling. That's the worst bump he's ever taken in his life.
I can't sound too sure which way this match is going at this point.
Yeah.
I'm going to say though, this is one of those classic moments when you go for a pin and it's been way too long.
It's like, do it already.
Almost if the other person was pinned at this point, it would weaken them in the image of the fans.
It's like a slow motion. Now the ref, of course, he starts to wake up.
How slow is that count?
It's like he's dying again. Oh dear. So the Undertaker holds out more. I'm interested to see how they're going to finale this one up after something like this.
Yeah, it's been all over the place, this one.
It's kind of crucial, I always find, with these matches, is the ending now. Especially when you go through all these epic kind of false finishes.
Yeah, it's almost one of those things where like the match keeps building and building and then going to the next level to the next level. You don't really want it to end on a downer where it's like going below one of the heights that it's already reached. You know, because the Rock coming in doing the Rock bottom, you know, if it ended on anything like underwhelming now, it would be a real disappointment.
Yeah, I think with these kind of matches at this time as well, I think that because they've hinted out like so many people could get involved what you find is most of the crowd spends a lot of the time just looking